the galaxy trembled under the weight of an overwhelming invasion. The Union, a coalition of species united under the banner of an ancient empire, had long since conquered the farthest reaches of the stars, and now, their attention had turned to Earth. Their fleets, vast and unrelenting, hovered over the cradle of humanity, blocking out the sun with their immense size. No one knew where the invaders had come from, or why they had set their sights on the blue planet, but one thing was clear: humanity had become the next target in their galaxy-spanning conquest. The United Earth government had been scrambling in desperation to mount a defense. Negotiations had failed. Diplomacy had been a joke. For months, Earth's finest minds had worked tirelessly to develop weapons capable of standing against the Union's might. But it wasn't enough. The invaders had already proven their superiority with devastating raids across the planet. Cities lay in ruin. Thousands of lives were lost before humanity could even prepare a defense. Then, the invasion fleet arrived. The first wave struck with the precision of an experienced predator. Across Earth's surface, colossal ships descended from the heavens. They were like nothing humanity had ever seen before, sleek, metallic behemoths that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. The Union soldiers, strange and terrifying beings with an alien amalgamation of organic and mechanical parts, emerged from their ships. The invasion had begun in earnest. As the Union forces established their dominance in Earth's orbit, they sent a final message to humanity: surrender or face utter destruction. They had no interest in exterminating the human race, but they would not hesitate to wipe away any resistance. The Earth's leaders, broken by the losses already sustained, were ready to negotiate their surrender. However, they hadn't counted on the spirit of the people. At the heart of Earth's last defenses, in a secret underground command center located beneath the desolate ruins of Washington, D.C., humanity's leaders convened for what was likely to be their final meeting. The President of the United Earth, Maria Moretti, a seasoned leader hardened by decades of political strife, stared at the incoming data on the holographic table before her. Every sensor, every satellite, every military asset, had confirmed what they had feared. The Union's fleet was too large, their firepower too immense. Any attempt at resistance would be futile. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her. The world had already been crumbling. The death toll was rising by the hour, and there was no more time to save the planet. Her voice, shaking, echoed in the silence of the room. "We surrender." But as the words left her mouth, a voice from across the room rang out, steady and calm, a voice of quiet defiance that cut through the heavy air like a blade. It was Captain Noah Hartwell, the commander of the United Earth Force's most elite unit, the Earthstrike Commandos. "We don't surrender." The room fell silent, every eye turning to the man who had spoken. Hartwell had always been known for his confidence, his skill in battle, and his ability to lead men and women through the most impossible situations. But now, he was offering something much more dangerous: hope. The president's gaze softened, her tired eyes meeting Hartwell's unyielding stare. "Captain, we have no choice. Look at the numbers. We cannot win. We may not win today, but we'll make them remember what it costs to come for us." Hartwell's voice was unwavering. "The Union thinks they've broken us, but they haven't seen what humanity is capable of when pushed to the edge. We refuse to be a footnote in their history. We'll fight. And we'll fight until they understand that there's no surrender in us." His words ignited something deep within the hearts of the assembled leaders. For the first time in weeks, hope began to flicker in the darkness. The humans on the front lines, the civilians, the soldiers, all of them felt it too. They weren't alone. Hartwell turned toward the holographic map, pointing to a series of positions marked on Earth's surface. "We'll strike from the shadows, sabotage their ships, disrupt their communications. We may not be able to win this fight in a single battle, but we can hit them where it hurts. We can make them feel the cost of invading a planet that refuses to be crushed." Moretti's eyes narrowed. She knew the risks. The Union's forces were ruthless, their technology far more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen. But there was a fire now that burned in her chest, one that could not be extinguished. She had seen the horrors of the invasion firsthand. She had watched the world burn. And she knew the price of surrender. Then we fight. We fight for every soul on this planet. For every person who has lost someone. For our children. For our future. With that, humanity's last stand had begun. The call to arms spread like wildfire, and across the planet, people answered. From the smallest villages to the greatest cities, men and women of every race and creed took up arms. The global resistance, once fragmented and uncertain, united in the face of extinction. And, deep in the heart of the battle, humanity's resolve would be tested in ways never before seen in the galaxy. The first shots had been fired. And the Union would soon learn that Earth was not a world they could simply conquer. The Union had expected Earth to surrender meekly, to fall in line like the countless other worlds they had annexed. But the moment humanity united, the invaders realized they had underestimated the power of the human spirit. The initial shockwave of the invasion had nearly broken Earth's defenses, but now, humanity was rallying. The resistance was growing, and it was becoming clear that Earth would not go down without a fight. Captain Noah Hartwell and his elite team, the Earthstrike Commandos, led the charge from the shadows. Their first mission was a simple one: infiltrate one of the Union's supply depots on the outskirts of New York. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A single blow that could disrupt the invaders' supply lines, slow down their advance, and, most importantly, prove to humanity that they could strike back. Hartwell stood at the head of his team, watching the vast, towering structures of the Union supply depot as it loomed before them. The glowing alien lights painted the landscape in an eerie, unnatural hue. He could almost taste the tension in the air. His team of hand-picked soldiers, each a master of their craft, stood poised for action. The depot would be heavily guarded, but this was their element: darkness, precision, and speed. As the team advanced, a series of signals flashed through Hartwell's helmet communicator, confirming the positions of enemy patrols. His team had trained for months on the exact tactics needed to take down the Union's defenses. The Union might have superior technology, but humanity's ingenuity and adaptability were their greatest assets. They didn't need to win the war in a single stroke, they just needed to show the invaders that humanity wasn't a species to be taken lightly. "Move out," Hartwell ordered, his voice calm but commanding. The Earthstrike Commandos disappeared into the shadows, making their way toward the supply depot with the grace of ghosts. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. They were silent, their advanced stealth technology blending them with the night. But even without the high-tech gadgets, each of them had learned the art of stealth and warfare through sheer willpower and determination. They reached the outer perimeter undetected. The depot's security systems were sophisticated, scanning for anything that didn't belong. But humanity's engineers had crafted a jamming device that would disrupt the sensors long enough for the team to slip inside. Hartwell's heart raced as he gave the signal to deploy the device. A small, triangular-shaped object hummed to life in his hands, sending a pulse of electromagnetic interference toward the enemy scanners. The defenses flickered for a moment, and then, silence. The team pushed forward. The depot was a labyrinth of metallic corridors and sterile rooms filled with alien technology. As they infiltrated deeper into the heart of the compound, the soldiers could hear the distant hum of Union soldiers moving between structures. The invaders' presence was oppressive, their towering, insect-like forms gliding effortlessly through the complex. But humanity was used to the pressure. They didn't shrink under it. They thrived. The team's objective was clear: sabotage the main power core. Without power, the depot would be rendered useless. But this was no simple mission. The Union would know something was amiss the moment the power grid went down, and the team had to make their escape before reinforcements arrived. Hartwell's second-in-command, Lieutenant Emily Vargas, communicated the plan in low whispers. "We hit the core, plant the charges, and get out. We don't wait for second chances. Got it?" The team acknowledged the orders, preparing to split into pairs to cover more ground. The tension was palpable. Every soldier understood what was at stake: failure meant certain death. And yet, There was no hesitation. They had come too far to back down now. As they reached the power core, Hartwell's pulse quickened. It was a massive engine, covered in alien symbols that flickered in strange, iridescent colors. The hum of its energy was almost hypnotic, like the heartbeat of an alien god. But they had no time for awe. Vargas planted the first charge on the core, her fingers steady as she wired it to the power conduit. Hartwell watched the door behind them, ensuring that no reinforcements were closing in. The seconds felt like hours. "Clear," Vargas whispered. The countdown began. The soldiers retreated down the corridors with military precision. They moved as one, knowing the only thing that mattered now was survival. The core was their target, but the real fight would be getting out alive. As they neared the exit, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The Union soldiers were on their way. The team made a dash for the exterior, their escape route lined with the Union's patrolling forces. There was no choice but to fight. Hartwell signaled the charge. The Earthstrike commandos sprang into action, using the element of surprise to their advantage. Explosives, hand-to-hand combat, and the occasional well-placed shot from their rifles ripped through the alien soldiers. The Union forces weren't accustomed to being outmaneuvered like this. They had underestimated humanity's will to survive. As they neared the final stretch, the building behind them erupted in a violent explosion, sending a shockwave of fire and debris into the sky. The depot was no more. The team sprinted into the night, the sound of alarms blaring in the distance. Their mission had been a success. But as the team vanished into the shadows, Hartwell knew this was just the beginning. The Union would retaliate. They would come in force. But humanity had just shown them that, no matter how powerful their technology, they would never be able to break the will of a species that refused to surrender. The galaxy would soon learn that when Earth fought back, it was with everything they had. The victory at the New York supply depot was small, but it was enough to send a ripple through Earth's resistance. The news spread quickly, from one corner of the planet to the other. Humanity had struck back. The Union was no longer invincible. Earth's forces, while still small and fragmented, had found a new sense of purpose. The resistance was no longer just surviving, it was beginning to push back. In the aftermath of the raid, Captain Noah Hartwell and his team received a brief reprieve. They were holed up in an underground base near the Rockies, a location known only to a select few in the resistance leadership. The base, once a civilian bunker from the pre-invasion days, had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Maps of Union troop movements were plastered across the walls, and holographic images of potential strike targets flickered under the dim light. Hartwell stood at the heart of the command center, looking over the intelligence reports. His mind, however, wasn't focused on the mission at hand. Instead, it was on the faces of the civilians, the families, the children, who had been caught in the Union's invasion. Every face haunted him. He knew that if the resistance was going to succeed, it would need more than just military strikes. It needed to rally the people, to forge a movement that would unite every corner of Earth. "We've made our first move, but the Union will retaliate soon," Hartwell said, his voice low but resolute. "We need to keep them on the defensive, to keep them guessing. But more importantly, we need to give the people something to believe in. We need to show them that there's hope." Lieutenant Emily Vargas, standing nearby, nodded. "We can't afford to be scattered any longer. If we're going to stand a chance, we need more fighters. We need to expand the resistance, get more supplies, and we need to hit them hard and fast before they regroup." Hartwell looked out over the vast wilderness beyond their base. The Union had already proven that they were relentless. Every strike against them only fueled their desire to crush Earth's defiance. But humanity had something the Union lacked, a deep, unyielding belief in their own survival. "We're not just fighting to survive," Hartwell said, his voice growing stronger. "We're fighting for something far bigger. We're fighting for the future of Earth. For our children. For our legacy. We're fighting for the freedom to live without fear. And that's something no invader, no matter how advanced, can take from us." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Hartwell's words hanging in the air. Then, one by one, the resistance leaders nodded in agreement. They knew the fight ahead would be long, brutal, and costly. But they also knew that there was no other choice. "We'll spread the word," Vargas said, her eyes glinting with resolve. "We'll make sure everyone knows what's at stake. This is humanity's fight, not just the fight of a few soldiers." The next phase of the resistance began. The word spread across Earth's shattered cities, through underground networks, and over the airwaves. The people of Earth were united by a singular idea: they would not be slaves to the Union. Every nation, every region, every community was called to rise up. The resistance was no longer a few scattered cells. It was now a movement, a flame that could not be extinguished. The Union, too, had begun to feel the pressure. The raids on their supply depots, their communication hubs, and their research facilities had disrupted their operations, causing chaos among their ranks. For the first time, the invaders found themselves fighting a war of attrition, a war they were unprepared for. The Union's commanders underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. Their machines could calculate probabilities, but they could never predict the fierce, unyielding heart of a species fighting for survival. In the heart of this resistance, Captain Hartwell was more determined than ever. But the stakes were growing higher with every passing day. He knew that the next strike, the next battle, would have to be decisive. It couldn't just be another hit-and-run operation. The Union had to be forced to the negotiating table. And if they refused to listen, humanity would make them understand that Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. The plan was simple but audacious. Hartwell's team, along with dozens of resistance fighters, would launch a direct assault on one of the Union's main planetary command centers, a sprawling fortress that controlled the Union's operations on Earth. It was heavily guarded, protected by layers of defenses and armed with some of the most advanced alien technology available. But Hartwell had one advantage: he knew that the Union believed humanity was finished. They had no idea what kind of fight they were walking into. As the team prepped for the mission, Hartwell felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The lives of every resistance fighter would be on the line. But more than that, the fate of Earth's future hung in the balance. "We take this facility, and we take their control of Earth. We make them realize that they've made a grave mistake," Hartwell said to his team as they gathered in the briefing room. "We won't be just another resistance force. We'll show them that humanity doesn't surrender. We never have, and we never will." The team was silent, their eyes burning with the same fire that had ignited the resistance. They had made it this far, against all odds. And now, they were about to take the fight to the Union itself. The mission would be brutal. It would be their most dangerous operation yet. But if humanity was going to win this war, it would be with one decisive strike, one that would shake the invaders to their core. And with that, the flame of resistance grew brighter. Earth's final stand was just beginning. The night was thick with tension as Captain Noah Hartwell and his team of Earthstrike commandos prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. Their target was the heart of the Union's operations on Earth, a heavily fortified planetary command center, located in the heart of what was once the European Union. It was a fortress that controlled everything: the Union's military strategy, its communication networks, and the supply chains that sustained its war machine. If they could breach it, if they could take it down, it would send a shockwave through the invaders' ranks. It could change everything. But they were outnumbered. They were outgunned. And the command center was an unassailable citadel, defended by an entire army of Union soldiers, automated sentries, and alien weaponry. Every step would be a fight, every corridor a battleground. Hartwell stood in front of the holographic map, his fingers tracing over the projected schematics of the command center. He studied every detail, every possible approach. The mission was straightforward: infiltrate, disable the command center's core, and cripple the Union's ability to control their forces on Earth. It would be a swift, precise strike, if they could make it. "Time to hit them where it hurts," Hartwell muttered, his jaw clenched in determination. Lieutenant Emily Vargas stood next to him, double-checking the team's gear. Her face was grim, but there was a fire in her eyes that was unmistakable. "We've trained for this," she said. "We've been through worse. This is what we do." The rest of the team nodded, their eyes hard with resolve. Sergeant William "Bill" Price, the demolitions expert, ran a hand through his graying hair and gave Hartwell a half-smile. "We blow things up. I like that part." Captain Hartwell allowed himself a rare smile. "This time, we make sure they won't recover." The team gathered their weapons, everything from plasma rifles to explosive charges, and made their way to the drop zone. The transport ship was small, designed for stealth. It would take them as close as possible to the command center's outer perimeter before they would have to go on foot. As the ship entered the atmosphere, the lights flickered, and the gravity shifted. The team braced themselves for the descent, their faces hardening with the knowledge that this was no ordinary mission. This was a gamble. A risky play to turn the tide in Earth's favor. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. The drop zone was quiet, too quiet. They touched down in a remote valley, hidden from the prying eyes of Union surveillance. Their objective was a series of caverns beneath the command center, old, abandoned military bunkers from Earth's pre-invasion days that had been repurposed as hidden entry points. The team moved swiftly, disappearing into the dense forest before making their way through the caves. But they weren't alone. As they neared the entrance to the underground passage, a crackling noise echoed in their earpieces, followed by a warning. "Tango spotted. Union patrol incoming. 2 clicks east." Hartwell's pulse quickened. The plan had just become more complicated. The Union's surveillance had become more advanced since their initial landing, and their patrols were becoming harder to evade. "Vargas, you take point. Price, set the explosives. Everyone else, cover the perimeter." Hartwell's voice was calm, but his mind was already calculating the risks. They had no choice but to move forward. They couldn't afford to delay. The team took their positions, the silence of the forest broken only by the distant hum of Union patrol ships overhead. Time was slipping away, but the mission had to succeed. The resistance was counting on them. Earth was counting on them. Hartwell's team moved with precision, taking out the patrols one by one. The Union soldiers, despite their superior technology, were no match for the Earthstrike Commandos' tactics. A well-placed shot here, a silent takedown there, nothing was left to chance. Every move was calculated. As they infiltrated deeper into the tunnels, they came across a massive, reinforced door that led to the heart of the Union command center. This was it. The final obstacle before the core. The core that, once disabled, would send the Union's infrastructure into chaos. Bill Price planted the last explosive charge on the door's security panel, his hand steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Charge set. We're good to go." With a flick of his hand, Hartwell nodded, and Price activated the detonation sequence. The door exploded in a cloud of smoke and debris, sending a shockwave through the tunnel. The blast echoed throughout the underground complex, signaling that their presence had been discovered. The Union would be on full alert now. "Let's move," Hartwell shouted, leading the charge through the wreckage. The team sprinted into the heart of the command center. Inside, the walls were lined with alien technology, computer terminals that flickered with strange symbols, glowing energy conduits that pulsed with unnatural life. The air was thick with the hum of power. The core was located at the center of the facility, surrounded by layers of security. The closer they got, the more dangerous it became. Automated turrets whirred to life, aiming their guns at the intruders. "Cover fire!" Vargas shouted as she fired her plasma rifle at the turrets, taking them out one by one. "Keep pushing!" Hartwell yelled, keeping his rifle raised as he led his team forward. The air was thick with gunfire and the constant whine of alien machinery. The further they advanced, the more overwhelming the Union's defense became. They were closing in on the core, but every step was paid for with blood. The team finally reached the central chamber, a vast, open space, glowing with the pulsing energy of the core. It was massive, an alien machine that could control the entire Union network on Earth. The walls were lined with Union soldiers, but Hartwell and his team had already gone beyond the point of no return. They fought through wave after wave of opposition. Hartwell's mind raced. This was it, the moment that could change everything. He signaled to Vargas. "Plant the charges. Now." Vargas rushed forward, positioning the explosive charges around the core's power conduits, while the rest of the team held the line. As the final charge was set, Hartwell stood with his back to the door, watching the Union forces try to regroup. "We've got what we came for. Let's finish this." The countdown began. The blast was deafening, shaking the very foundations of the Union's command center. The core erupted in a burst of energy, sending out a pulse that disabled the Union's communications network and crippled their control over Earth. For a moment, the world held its breath. The Earth had just taken a monumental step toward victory. But the Union was not done yet. Not by a long shot. The explosion that shattered the Union's command center sent shockwaves across Earth, but it also set off a series of retaliatory strikes. Humanity had made a bold move, and the Union was far from idle. The invasion had never been about simple conquest, it was a calculated operation to dominate, to control, and to break the human spirit. Now, with their most crucial nerve center in ruins, the Union would respond with everything they had left. In the aftermath of their successful mission, Captain Noah Hartwell and his team were on the run. The blast had incapacitated Union communication and surveillance networks, but it had also made them a target. No longer just hunted soldiers, they were now symbols of humanity's resistance. The Union wanted their heads. And they wanted Earth to know it. The team had split up, taking different routes to reach a hidden safehouse deep in the mountains of South America. The Resistance's network of underground bunkers and safe zones had grown exponentially since the first raid on New York, but each safe zone was now a potential death sentence. The Union's response was swift and brutal. They had begun deploying advanced hunting squads, specially trained elite soldiers who specialized in tracking and eliminating insurgent forces. Hartwell and his team had survived by staying one step ahead, but their time was running out. They couldn't hide forever. Inside the safe house, the team gathered around a holographic map of Earth, now scarred by the ravages of the invasion. The map highlighted areas of resistance strongholds, Union-controlled territories, and hot zones where Union operations were intensifying. They had disrupted the Union's command structure, but now the invaders were starting to target humanity's civilian infrastructure, razing entire cities to make an example of the resistance. "We hit them where it hurts," Hartwell said, his finger tracing over the map. "If we can't stop them from hitting our people, if we can't protect our civilians, then we lose. It's that simple." Lieutenant Emily Vargas looked up from her data pad, her expression hardening. "They're rounding up refugees in the Western Territories. If we don't act soon, we'll lose entire regions." Captain Hartwell's mind churned as he processed the new intel. The Union was getting desperate. They were no longer just focusing on military targets, they were systematically erasing Earth's population, hoping to break humanity's morale. The survivors were being pushed into makeshift camps, their every move controlled by Union enforcers. If Earth's resistance didn't act, Earth itself would become a ghost planet. But there was something else. A flicker of hope. "We're not the only ones fighting," Hartwell said, looking around the room. "I've been getting reports from other resistance factions, more and more. Small groups, local militias, even civilians with no training, rising up. The Union is starting to fight a war on multiple fronts. They can't keep up." Vargas raised an eyebrow. "You think that's enough? A bunch of disorganized militias?" "No," Hartwell replied, shaking his head. "But they can be. We need to unify these factions, make them one force. One voice. We can't just keep picking at their supply lines. We need to take the fight to their heart." It wasn't just a matter of winning a single battle anymore, it was about galvanizing the entire planet. For years, humanity had been fractured, divided by politics, ideologies, and old conflicts. But in the face of the Union's destruction, something had changed. The human race had started to see the bigger picture. This was a fight for survival. This was about more than national borders, it was about the future of Earth. But the Union wasn't blind. They knew this too. In the skies above, Union ships prowled like vultures, scanning for signs of resistance. And they had recently deployed their most devastating weapon, the Razor-class orbital laser. The weapon, capable of annihilating entire cities with a single, precise beam, was a game-changer. And it was only a matter of time before the Union used it to make an example out of one of Earth's remaining strongholds. Hartwell's team had to act quickly, but there was no time to waste on indecision. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. "I have an idea," Bill Price, the demolitions expert, spoke up, his face lit by the glow of a tactical display. "We don't need to fight their forces head-on. What we need is to make them think we're capable of something bigger. Something terrifying." Hartwell glanced at him, intrigued. "Go on." "We're talking about their orbital laser, right?" Price continued. "We can't destroy it, but we can disrupt it. If we can hit their control network, if we can break the systems that feed into the targeting systems, we can make them think they're being attacked from orbit. They'll have to divert forces to protect their base." The idea was audacious, but Price had a point. If the Union's laser system could be crippled, it would buy Earth's forces the time they needed to regroup and strengthen their defenses. "Where do we hit them?" Vargas asked. Hartwell turned toward the map again, zooming in on the coordinates. The Union's orbital control station was located on a remote asteroid just outside the Earth-Moon system. It was a heavily fortified base, bristling with weaponry, shield generators, and defenses. Getting there would require a specialized team of pilots, engineers, and soldiers who could breach its outer defenses and infiltrate the control room. Hartwell's hand hovered over the map for a moment before he spoke, a determined fire burning in his eyes. "We go in. We hit them where they least expect it. We make them believe Earth is more than they bargained for." The plan was risky, far beyond anything they had attempted before. But the stakes had never been higher. If they failed, the Union would launch their orbital weapon with devastating consequences, and humanity's last hope for victory would be snuffed out. "This is it," Hartwell said, standing up. "We take the fight to the stars. The Union won't know what hit them." With that, Earth's final stand moved from the planet's surface to the vast expanse of space, where the fate of the human race would be decided. Every moment mattered, and for the first time in the war, humanity would take the offensive. The time for hiding was over. The Union would soon learn that they had provoked a force far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The plan to strike at the Union's orbital control station was as dangerous as it was ambitious. A full-on assault would be suicide. The station was located on an asteroid just outside Earth's gravitational pull, surrounded by Union warships, shielded platforms, and automated defense systems. But Captain Noah Hartwell's team wasn't going to charge in guns blazing. They would need to be smart, tactical, and above all, fast. The team had been gathering for days, gathering supplies, making final adjustments to their gear, and preparing for the mission of a lifetime. For Earth to stand any chance at survival, they had to neutralize the Union's orbital weapon. They had no choice. "We've got one shot at this," Hartwell said as he addressed the team. "We're hitting them in the heart. We take out their targeting systems, their communication relay, everything. They'll think they've been attacked by an outside force, and they'll pull back their reinforcements to protect their station. We'll buy Earth a few weeks of breathing room, and that's all we need." The team, though fatigued from their earlier successes and constant skirmishes, nodded. They had become a family of sorts. They knew the risks. They knew that if this mission failed, there would be no second chances. There would be no Earth to save. The journey began aboard the Aegis, a stealth transport ship outfitted with state-of-the-art technology. It was a marvel of human engineering, capable of blending into the void of space, using advanced cloaking mechanisms to avoid Union detection. The crew was small but efficient: Hartwell, Vargas, Price, and a hand-picked team of expert pilots and engineers who had volunteered for the mission. As the Aegis drifted through the cold vacuum of space, Hartwell's mind wandered, focusing not on the mission itself, but on the human element. They were just a few thousand strong, but the spirit of resistance had been growing stronger with each passing day. Every skirmish, every victory, no matter how small, had emboldened more people to fight. The Union might have controlled Earth, but it couldn't control humanity's will. Their target was in sight. The Union's orbital station, codenamed Hercules, was a sprawling complex built into the surface of the asteroid. From a distance, it looked almost peaceful, a ring of light orbiting in the darkness. But it was anything but peaceful. The station was the nerve center of the Union's orbital weapon. If humanity could disrupt it, they could delay the Union's ability to wipe out Earth's last remaining strongholds. The Aegis approached cautiously, cloaking itself in the shadow of a nearby moon to avoid detection. The station was surrounded by automated drones, sensors, and turrets, an impenetrable fortress, designed to make any attack seem impossible. But humanity had never backed down from the impossible. And neither would Hartwell's team. Stealth mode engaged. "We're just a blip on their radar," said Captain Reagan Hall, the ship's pilot, her voice calm and measured despite the enormous risks. "We should be able to get close enough for the breaching team to infiltrate." "Good," Hartwell said, his tone steady. "Once we're in, we'll split up. Vargas, you'll lead the team to take down their primary defenses. Price, you're with me, let's plant charges at their communication relay. We won't have long before they realize something's wrong." The team set their plan into motion, and the Aegis drifted silently through the cold expanse of space, approaching the docking bay of the station. But just as they were about to enter the docking zone, a warning blared across the ship's internal comms: incoming detection in 30 seconds. The Union's advanced radar systems had finally picked up on the Aegis' presence, likely from a subtle fluctuation in their cloaking field. They had been detected. A split second later, alarms began to wail as automated defense drones, each the size of a human, swarmed toward the ship. "Brace for impact," Hall shouted as she quickly spun the ship to avoid the incoming drones. The ship shuddered under the strain, but Hall's hands were steady as she maneuvered the Aegis through the attack, weaving through the swarm with expert precision. "We're not going to make it through this without being noticed," Vargas said, eyes fixed on the radar as drones filled the screen. "We don't need to," Hartwell replied, his voice calm. "Initiating Plan B, prepare to board." Without hesitation, Hartwell and his team suited up in their tactical gear, bracing for the worst. They would be boarding a hostile station in the middle of an active defense. There was no going back. As the ship approached the docking bay, Price grabbed his explosive charges, checking their status for the final time. Every step was critical now. "Let's go," Hartwell ordered. The team rushed to the airlock, stepping out of the ship into the cold vacuum of space. Magnetic boots secured their position on the hull of the Aegis as they made their way to the station's docking doors, the hum of Union drones echoing in the distance. The air was thin, the silence deafening. In moments, they would be inside the station. They couldn't afford to hesitate. Every second mattered. "Drones inbound," shouted Vargas. Before they could react, the drones swooped down, weapons drawn. The team split into two groups. Hartwell and Price took the lead, advancing toward the docking hatch, while Vargas and her team engaged the drones, their weapons cutting through the darkness. Shots echoed through the hull as energy blasts from the drones slammed into the team's shields. Each hit was a warning: if they didn't neutralize the drones soon, they'd be outgunned. Hartwell and Price raced forward, firing as they ran, the drones' weapons sparking as their shields held strong. The docking hatch was within reach. Price detonated a small charge at the control panel, and the doors slowly hissed open, revealing the darkened corridors of the Hercules. "Move, move!" Hartwell shouted. The team rushed inside, slamming the door shut behind them. For the first time in the mission, they were inside. But as they moved deeper into the station's heart, they could feel the weight of the situation. Every hall was a potential trap. Every turn could bring them face to face with Union forces. They had entered the lion's den. And they had no intention of leaving without taking down the beast. The Hercules orbital control station was a labyrinth, its metallic corridors twisting in ways that seemed to defy logic. Every turn, every shadow, every distant hum of machinery was a potential threat. Captain Noah Hartwell's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind remained focused. There was no room for hesitation. The team had crossed the threshold, and now the only way out was to finish the mission. "We've got one shot," Hartwell muttered to himself, though he knew everyone else felt the weight of those words. If they didn't neutralize the orbital targeting systems, Earth's fate was sealed. The Union would level their cities, their strongholds, everything. "Keep your heads down," Vargas ordered as they moved forward, weapons raised. Her sharp eyes scanned every corner, every ceiling vent, every air duct. The last thing they needed was an ambush. As they moved deeper into the station, Hartwell glanced back at Price, who was busy checking the demolition charges he'd placed in various control rooms and junctions. The man's face was as impassive as ever, but Hartwell knew that even Price's steady hands were tinged with anxiety. This wasn't just any mission. This was a mission to end it all. If they failed, Earth would remain under Union rule, doomed to a future of subjugation and extinction. The further they went, the more oppressive the station became. The Hercules wasn't just a control hub, it was a fortress. The walls were reinforced with alien alloys, designed to withstand even the most devastating attacks. There were automated sentries at every corner, their glowing red eyes scanning for intruders. The air was thick with the hum of the Union's advanced systems, and the low-frequency vibrations in the walls only added to the tension. The feeling that they were being watched was constant. It was only a matter of time before the Union realized they had infiltrated the heart of their operations. "We're close," Hartwell whispered, pointing to a nearby terminal. "That's the relay we need to disable. If we cut it off, we sever the connection to their targeting systems." Vargas gave a sharp nod. "Price, set the charges. We need to blow this place sky high once we're done." Price moved with deliberate precision, attaching small explosives to key nodes in the relay's control system. "Done. If anyone tries to mess with it after we're gone, the whole station's going up. You won't even find dust." With a grim smile, Hartwell turned back toward the corridor. "Let's move." They continued their advance toward the heart of the station, the control room that housed the Union's orbital targeting network. Every step brought them closer to their objective, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Their movements became more deliberate, more cautious. They couldn't afford to make a sound. If the Union realized what they were doing, all was lost. Suddenly, an alarm blared, shattering the silence. "Damn it!" Vargas hissed, raising her weapon in preparation for a firefight. "They've found us." The doors to the control room burst open, and a squad of Union soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. They wore advanced combat armor, their rifles glowing with energy, and their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets. It was the elite, a special forces team, trained to deal with threats like Hartwell's team. They were fast, deadly, and relentless. "Take them down!" Hartwell shouted, the words barely escaping his lips as he dove behind cover, returning fire with precision. The battle exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts scorched the walls, turning the once silent station into a war zone. Vargas ducked behind a console, exchanging fire with one of the Union soldiers. Price lobbed a grenade, sending a Union trooper flying backward as it detonated with a deafening crack. Hartwell's mind was a blur as he moved through the chaos. He could feel the weight of his pulse rifle in his hands, the hum of the energy blasts around him, the relentless thrum of his heart. This was it. The final confrontation. The Union soldiers were good. Very good. But humanity had something the Union could never replicate, a fierce, unyielding will to fight for survival. Every member of Hartwell's team was a product of that will. Every soldier, every engineer, every pilot had chosen to stand against the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had chosen to defy the inevitable. "We're not done yet." Hartwell yelled, launching himself from cover and charging toward the control room's central terminal. His team followed, pushing forward in a synchronized assault, each one taking out a Union soldier in their path. Hartwell reached the terminal, slamming his fist down on the activation panel. Sparks flew, and the console flickered before shutting down completely. "We did it," Hartwell breathed, his eyes flicking between the team. "The connection's severed. They won't be able to fire the orbital laser." But the victory was short-lived. The entire station shuddered as if it were alive, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow over the room. It was too quiet. Too ominous. "Move, now!" Vargas screamed. A massive blast tore through the ceiling above them, sending debris flying. The ceiling collapsed, and the station groaned under the strain. Hartwell could feel the station itself beginning to fracture as explosions rippled outward from the relay core. "They're activating the self-destruct," Price shouted, his eyes wide with panic. "We've got minutes before this entire place turns to ash." With no time to waste, the team sprinted back toward the docking bay. Every second felt like an eternity. The walls vibrated with the sound of the countdown ticking in their ears. "Come on, move!" Hartwell shouted, pushing forward, his heart racing. They rounded corners, taking shortcuts, avoiding the remaining Union troops as they made their way to the hangar. The Aegis was still docked, but it was a race against time. Every moment, the station's self-destruct countdown drew closer to zero. The Union had sealed off most of the escape routes, but Hartwell's team knew this station better than anyone else. Finally, they reached the Aegis, their breath ragged, their bodies pushed to their limits. "Engage the cloaking device, Hull!" Hartwell barked, not even waiting for her response as he and Price jumped into the cockpit. The ship's engines roared to life, and with a flash, the Aegis shot out of the station's hangar, narrowly avoiding a series of closing blast doors. As they sped away, Hartwell glanced back over his shoulder. Through the chaos, he saw the Hercules station beginning to disintegrate, the self-destruct sequence taking its toll. The explosion echoed across space, a final warning to the Union that humanity was not to be underestimated. The mission had been a success. But Hartwell knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The Union had underestimated Earth's resolve, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The war was far from over. Humanity had only one option left, to fight. And fight they would. To the very end.